why did this not perform as well as it should have? So if you look at the most popular comments, first one, 16 upvotes. Yeah, like many, I'm out. Co-op is my playstyle of choice. No reason to back without it. Did you really need to scrap the co-op altogether? But if anything, I'd rather you ditch the PvP and just focus on the co-op. These are the highest upvoted comments. I'm just like sad for them, you know, in this way where they just put everything they had into it and they got a less than stellar result. Hey everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I'm your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am joined as always by Sean. And today we're taking a little pivot from our normal, our kind of series that we're going through of before, during, and after your crowdfunding campaign to talk about a particular campaign and what it kind of maybe the tip of the iceberg of a discussion related to when you go all out for your crowdfunding campaign and it fails, like what in the world happened. And so the campaign in question is actually very specifically Bloodstone that funded on Gamefound. It actually funded $180,000 on Gamefound very recently. And, in the month earlier in the month of June. And I consider it a failure. And I was just kind of thinking about, like, you know, there are a number of campaigns that are similar, that are like arena battler games that have underperformed. And I just thought Bloodstone was so well, you know, it looked so good. Like the project page looked so good. And it has a very long saga of, trying to get this thing funded by a very reputable creator that's known for delivering and making great games. And so, I'm not trying to like call out the creator in any way. I'm just thinking, you know, this should have done better if you look at it on the surface. And so part of what I want to do is just diagnose why it didn't do as well. Maybe we could talk about, you know, many people would say 180,000 is a resounding success. And so, I just want to kind of, maybe get this out in the open and discuss it, because I think that it has a lot of, it might resonate with a lot more backers than just, creators than just, talking about a single project. I think there are many lessons we can learn from this particular campaign. And just to like kind of be upfront, I have no ties to the company. They've never been a client of mine. I've never really, had a relationship of any kind, like business wise or whatever, with this company. And I certainly have nothing against them. And I actually think that they do a really great job with a lot of their projects. So, that's probably, I don't know if it's going to win them over as a client or something, but, hopefully at least it's taken, I don't even know if they'll watch this, but, at least I just want our listeners to know that I'm not trying to be like trash talk or kick a dog when he's down, So
for those who aren't really familiar with the project, you want to just summarize what the game is about? Sure. And maybe your first thoughts on why you think it didn't do as well. Maybe I can just interject here. I do know that this was launched a couple of years ago on Kickstarter, and they raised, I think it was 300,000, and they canceled the project because it wasn't going as planned. So then it was several years later, they then launched again on Gamefound, and it does, about half of what they originally launched, and the original launch was a failure. So I suppose this could be, it's just sort of evidence that they haven't really maybe achieved what they were hoping to achieve with this project. But for those who are completely unfamiliar with what the game is, maybe just talk about the mechanics, the kind of theme, and the things which might make this interesting to folks.
Sure. So the game Bloodstone is kind of what I call an arena battler game, or a skirmish arena game, where you play. The original one was cooperative, competitive, and I want to say there was like a one versus many, or maybe that was the new campaign, but there was definitely a cooperative campaign as well as a competitive 1v1 mode. And they launched it in 2021, which was probably one of the better years to launch a Kickstarter. I think that, 2020, 2021, you had the whole COVID thing happening, but so more people were staying home, and the government in the U.S. at least was giving refunds for people to like COVID relief funds, which everyone was just blowing on board games, and so there was a lot of money injected into crowdfunding at that time, and so that's when they launched Bloodstone. And Bloodstone was in between games like Tidal Blades, which did really, really well, Wonderland's War, which I still see people playing, and that's pretty much those two IPs seem to be like the strength of Druid City Games, like overall. I know they have Grim Forest as well, which is a very popular game, but the Alice in Wonderland kind of IP, if you will, they're doing a really great job with that, and Fairy Tales and stuff. And then Tidal Blades is a really cool original. And so this game Bloodstone was the guy that runs the company, James Hudson. He kind of said that this was his baby. This was the one that he'd been working on for a really long time, and they had concerns. In fact, actually, we're not the first people to talk about this or anything. Alex Radcliffe, back in like 2021, he put out a video. In fact, I'm going to show my screen. So Alex Radcliffe put out a video back in, I don't know when, March 12th, 2021, canceled Kickstarters and what happened with Bloodstone. So Bloodstone launched early, like either late 2020 or early 2021, something like that. And Alex Radcliffe put a video out about this to discuss why it did the numbers it did. So their funding goal was 150,000. They raised like almost 300,000, and then they canceled. The original, let me see, I think this one was the original campaign. So yeah, $294,000 and almost 2,700 backers. So for those of you watching on YouTube, you're watching the video, but those listening via podcast, I'll try to kind of explain what I'm looking at. So they had, they canceled the campaign, and they said, we're taking time to improve the campaign based on your feedback. And, it was described as a, arena battler with highly detailed champion miniatures and all sorts of cool things that, could have like premium upgrades and whatnot. So you've got lots of dice, you've got a cool arena, and all sorts of other elements. So the concerns that backers had raised were things like the game, the unique part of the game, like, so it's an arena battler game, but how is it different from other games that are out? I think Arena the Contest and the one, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like by Mythic Games, that the company that went out of business a long time ago now. They super monster, anyway, it's like an arena battler game that was pretty innovative at the time. And
Super Fantasy Ball.
Yes, Super Fantasy Brawl. So I actually played that one at Gamma back in 2020, and it was a really fun game. So anyway, the backers were wondering like, what's unique about this experience in Bloodstone versus those games. And there were other questions at the time. $125 was the pledge. I want to say the main pledge tier. So yeah, the Warrior was the Bloodstone base game, and then the gameplay and lore content, like if you wanted all the gameplay and lore content for Bloodstone, it was $160, and then $199 was the all in. This isn't like mind-blowingly expensive for a game like this, but it was, people were concerned. And I haven't done all the, in the old campaign, I didn't do like all the figuring for like if this was a good price or not. It seemed very expensive, but I thought that there were like a bunch of custom game trays did their inserts and whatnot, and so it just seemed like a very expensive campaign that was very premium, and so some people were, there was a common concern that it was very expensive. So they canceled it. They felt probably that they were missing a lot of backers that they could be earning if they fixed some of their problems that were properly identified. And then they went ahead and planned for a relaunch. And I don't know exactly when or how, but I know that for a while, for a long time, James Hudson was a like kind of a director of games over at Skybound Entertainment, and I don't think they are anymore. I don't even know if Skybound has like a games division anymore, like board games or not. But so Bloodstone was like they wanted to go live with the campaign on Kickstarter, and they created a relaunch. They had over 3,300 followers on their relaunch. I don't know exactly what the deal is with this, but they have updates related to, you know, there's a they were going to launch on June 2nd, or actually they did launch on June 2nd. This was the an update related to like the latest and I think that these are pretty recent, March 10th of this year. These are pretty recent. Kickstarter gives you the ability to like send updates out before your campaign launches, but that was a very recent feature. So this was, I want to say, 2024, and that they kind of started this relaunch effort. And I don't remember exactly where I learned that. I'm just kind of going off of memory here, but so their games, their first Bloodstone game, they released Tidal Blades 2, Wonderlands War expansion, a game called Mad Kala, which is based off of the Wonderlands War IP, and then Wonderlands War Duel, which crushed it, did such a great job with the funding and everything. And so now here we come to this Gamefound campaign. So they finally launch. They decided not to launch on Kickstarter, and I don't know why that is, but they decided to launch on Gamefound instead. And let me say, kind of early on, like people will be wondering, or maybe even using the excuse, well, they decided to switch to Gamefound. That was their big mistake. And let me tell you, I mean, yeah, maybe they had a lot of followers, a lot of history on Kickstarter, and so they could have lost some going over to Gamefound. But I do not believe that that was their primary mistake. I don't think that Gamefound is at all to blame for the funding difference of I mean it raised, I mean not quite half of, well, I guess just over half of what they raised on Kickstarter in 4 years or 5 years ago. I don't believe that that was due to Gamefound. Now, maybe could it contribute? Maybe, but I just not to the degree that we're seeing here. And so the question is why. So first of all, like maybe we could address before we try to answer why. We could address what, like, is $180,000 with 928 backers a failure? Because a lot of people would say no, it's not. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think if this was a first time creator, then no. But this is, I suppose, from a publisher who has multiple successes. This was a relaunch. The original campaign raised more. So yes, I think in light of all of that, then yes, I think I can't imagine they're particularly thrilled about the results. But I'm sure it's enough to actually produce the product, and maybe they can move on, count their losses, or it just adds to their catalog, and they can use it to sort of promote other areas of their other games that they have. I'm sure there's benefits to it, but yeah, I can't imagine that they're overall too thrilled, just because I'm sure there was a lot of I suppose, Andrew, what do you reckon the average cost producing a board game is in terms of art and development time, manufacturing, all those things? Is it even profitable at 180 for a game of the size with miniatures and things?
That's actually one of the points I was going to make, is that I do not believe it was profitable. Let's just look how they display the miniatures and the character boards and stuff like that. And now look at, as I scroll down, there's one small thing. Look at like game trays insert, not final design, right? So, which is very common to have, like, hey, we have Game Trays. Game Trays is a great company to design inserts that are useful, that you want, that really add a premium, addition to any game. And so Game Trays is a great plus for every company that uses it. Now look at this Bloodstone campaign trailer. First of all, like, they have what looks like all the art is just much further along. But look at the difference. Just as I scroll to look at the very first image, it's got everything displayed in a really tight, cool way. The character boards are different, but look at like the difference in art and everything like that. You've got like very cool like gifs and things like that, that show how the game works and whatnot, which can come from a video. It doesn't cost $1 million to do this if you have real, but like just look at the quality of assets they have. They're really, really great. And whoever worked on this campaign page did a really good job. One other thing, I want to scroll down to show you maybe the what's in the box, what's in the deluxe edition. So let's look at this, what's in the box. So look at the way they're displaying their miniatures. They're much more attractive. They're just, gobs of great plastic and the dice and the cards and everything, but what I wanted to show was like,
nothing of this looks cheap or that hasn't been well thought through or prepared and planned. So it's
so this is what I was looking for, this custom storage. So look at this. So this is called Black Magic. The company is called Black Magic. They are not using game trays for this, but look at the level of effort that goes into the storage of this product. This is really, really next level. This is, I would say, on the level of like Roxley games with Dice Throne, the like the premium editions of Dice Throne. It's like they must have been inspired by Roxley and how what an incredible job they did for their storage. And it seems like it has a similar solution. You've got all the ways that, all the champions, you've got that you can pick out, and their custom storage solution for each and every champion. And, fiend storage and dice and token storage and everything like that. This is like really, really well produced. And this is all a digital, like 3D rendering of what the storage will look like. But I can tell that they're very, very far into the actual, storage solution. They've have all of the design done and, enough to make a box like this. So, and even it actually looks really similar to Dice Throne with like dice on the bottom and tokens on the top and cards and things in the middle. But it's hard to do this, really hard to do this. It's also very expensive to do this. So my gut tells me that in order to break even on a campaign like this, before you really consider marketing, in order to make enough units, you probably have to make between $300,000 and $400,000 worth of pledges just to kind of, if you will, break even on a campaign like this. And I did a very large campaign of similar nature, and I calculated when it would be kind of a, for our expansion for Deliverance, when it would be I don't want to call it break even, but when it would start to be profitable was $358,000. Because of the way that we did our shipping and VAT and everything, like everything factored in together. If I made $358,000 or like 357 and change, then it would be quote unquote worthwhile to do all of this stuff. Now, that doesn't necessarily include all of the marketing spend, but it factored in a significant amount of marketing spend in order to get the game off the ground and everybody know about it and whatnot. And so I would wager to say this company had a very similar number to break even, but there was a difference. And so that's why, if you're looking at, let's just say conservative estimate, 300,000, this is a very big, $120,000 in the hole for this project using my made up numbers, right?
Yeah, potentially. I think another thing with in case of your example is that I suppose it was your first title, so you actually were also, you couldn't really leverage an existing client base, which I'm sure.
Well, I had I guess I had like 6,000 people, but yeah, not nearly as many as Druid City Games has. That's for sure.
So yeah, it is that kind of that maybe points us in the right direction in terms of the scale of projects like this. Now, what I find interesting is that this game sort of reminds me, it's very similar to Tekken on Gamefound, which is very, very similar in terms of a kind of arena-based game where you're fighting. And I wonder why this has sort of struggled. Well, Tekken did relatively well. I think it's just under 1 million. Maybe that isn't particularly well for such a big IP, but I do think when it comes to these types of games, and especially when you're getting to these price points where it's it's 130, and because they're competitive, I feel like a lot of the competitive tabletop gamers are already playing well-established competitive games. So they're playing your TCGs, probably playing Warhammer competitively. Those games, and I recently saw a sort of a side-by-side comparison how much it costs to kind of get into certain hobbies. Magic the Gathering was the highest, most expensive. You basically need about 1,500 to get like a viable competitive deck. And then Warhammer was something similar. I think it was about $800 or so to kind of get like a 2,000 point army. If you were sort of shopping for bargains and stuff, you can kind of get in at around that price. And I think when you start looking at tabletop games, competitive games, you're suddenly now stepping on the toes of demographics, which are very well established, have a lot more marketing budgets than you, are far more attractive. And I think as people who back campaigns, they're thinking, should I be spending nearly $200 here on getting all the things, or should I be dumping another $200 into my Magic deck or into my Warhammer army? So I think you start to kind of cross the line where you're kind of budging into demographics of people who are well established in competitive games. And then also all the other type of arena games that are out there that might even be cheaper, like Dice Throne or, as I said, Tekken. So I think that's where you start to maybe cross over the line there. So I think arena games really suffer from this, and this is why I think to really make them work, to make them shine, I think you have to kind of approach them with a big IP. There has to be like a pretty big pull, unless you're doing something really revolutionary. It's like, oh, it's it's like this, but you play it in 3 minutes. And there's no setup. It's like something insane that no one's done before. Otherwise, I think the pull has to probably be a big IP. So this has to be like a lot of new people who they're basically just backing because they love the IP. They've never backed a board game before, and I think that's what's really going to make these types of games really sell and sing.
So I think that one of the keys, because of, like you mentioned, Magic and Warhammer are two really, really popular kind of, we'll say, just like 1v1, winner take all type board games, or Warhammer, Magic is a card game and Warhammer is a tabletop RPG or tabletop war game. But and this one kind of strikes a balance of something in the middle because it's a board game. But I think that in order for me to want to play this over, let's say, Magic, the main thing I need to know is what makes this really clutch unique. And I think that's one thing that their original campaign struggled with. And in order to try to get this game, to really, really sharpen this game, I think one of the original problems was for the designers that made this known was that there were several modes. So co-op and competitive naturally in board games kind of conflict with one another in the types of experience. Like I want, for example, in co-op, I should be able to discover broken combos that make me dominate every once in a while. Like I should be able to have like this magical, turn that just unloads, and that's totally fine because it probably knocked down a huge wave of minions and I feel great about myself, but the boss fight is still coming. You can do things like that in co-op, but then competitive, you have to balance more closely. I would say one of probably the best arena-based board game I can think of is Unmatched, like the most successful arena-based board game that I can think of is by Restoration Games, and they sell like gangbusters. I actually just bought their Stars and Stripes standalone because George Washington,
the 4th of July,
to play George Washington, the Spy Master, and there's some really cool characters in that one. But the way that game plays is pretty fast, so it plays pretty quick. We've done several arena board games. I want to say Sudden Conflict was one that we did. That was kind of a letdown for the creators. We couldn't raise as much as we hoped for the creators, and then they went to Gamefound, and then they actually raised the exact same amount on Gamefound as they did when they were our clients. And then let's see, We did Ascendancy, that's up on my shelf here. That actually did really well as a first project, and that raised like 400,000 or more than 400K. Very expensive, big box, and they came out with a huge expansion that was very similarly sized, and they raised I want to say a similar number, like around 400K. But overall, I would say those experiences is hard to get people to understand like what makes this experience unique in like the arena board game in particular. And so I think that the number one thing that stood out to me about the first one was the fact that we could play cooperative. Is something first of all, it immediately distinguishes you from games like Magic and Warhammer and whatever, because you don't really play co-op. You can play on teams, but you can't play against intelligent enemy AI that will surprise you and change your best laid plans and stuff like that. So I think that in the way that they portrayed Bloodstone in the latest campaign is choose your champions and fiend. So I don't know if a fiend is like a little helper, or if it's
pet or something, I imagine.
Yeah, like if it's
like
a
an
pet
NPC.
or and then reveal your initiative card to start a round. So you're going to draw like 5 cards or something like that, or 6 cards, and then the lower number is the one that goes first in order. So the lower number probably represents a more powerful card, but going first is a very powerful effect in games like this. So on your initiative, you're going to roll your dice and then see what you're able to do. So you, however much energy you have, whatever your HP is, and other things like that. Then you choose your target and attack. So you have like a type of their I don't know exactly, like their graphics are just hilarious. So you've got a way that you can target and everything like that. There's this game that I played. It was like a Warhammer game that was somewhat interesting, kind of like this. Where you just try to knock people into walls and knock them into the lava and other things like that. And then you have an ultimate ability, which lets you, wreck everyone with electricity if you're watching this little video. The question I have, I guess, is what is special and different about that than something else? And I can't actually tell. It seems like the way that they kind of tried to portray this was, for those that love these types of games, we're going to give you everything and the kitchen sink so that every single style is kind of represented, and that you just only need to buy this one box and you will have the best arena game experience. And you won't want to play any other of your arena games, because this has all the elements of those, and etc. So I'm not saying that there's nothing innovative about this, but I'm saying, like, I think that the main standout to me is just the level of production. So level of variety and characters you can play, and levels of production. But I'm not sure exactly how long it takes to play. It seems like it would play in maybe an hour, something like that.
What's 30 minutes per player, and maybe that's also one of the drawbacks, because if you're thinking about maybe like a Magic game or like TCG, usually kind of falls within 20 minutes, and if it's 30 per player, you're playing 4 players, it might put on maybe the long end of you don't want to play a competitive game that's very long just to lose. It doesn't feel very good. It's almost better to lose quickly and let's play again, or best out of 3. That's usually a better.
I think one of the greatest things about Dice Throne or Unmatched is or Magic, like 20-minute games. Unless you're playing a blue player, then it's an hour of he has 18 land out there and he says, okay, I end my turn. It's like, I'm not going to be able to play anything I want on my turn. So. Hey, Crowdfunding Nerds, it's Andrew Lowen, and I wanted to introduce you guys to the Crowdfunding Nerds Academy. If you don't know, we have a do-it-yourself course system that will teach you how to build, excite, and prepare a crowd to fund you on your launch day, and that is our goal. I have used these systems to help raise over $30 million for tabletop campaigns, over 200 tabletop crowdfunding campaigns since 2019. I've generated over $100 million through e-commerce sales using these processes. These courses teach you how to replicate our results. They're made for the small creator. Over 150 of those people were first-time creators. These courses contain hundreds of hours of podcast discussions and tons of details that are almost impossible to find on the internet. And they have been distilled into concentrated courses that you can absorb quickly. They are designed to generate results. We hold nothing back. Visit crowdfundingnerds.com/academy to learn more, or just Google search Crowdfunding Nerds Academy. Back to the show.
The other thing is that there's a lot of dice in the game, so maybe that puts off people. I know that some people just don't like the idea of randomness or dice, which is ironic because Warhammer is super popular and it's just a dice chucking game. So I like dice because it's great for kids. Kids like rolling dice, and I often play with my kids. But that might turn people off, where it's like, I don't really want to play a game where I'm rolling lots of dice.
Yeah, so the dice, right here. So first of all, they're just kind of basic dice. There's nothing custom about them. There are some that are custom, like this 8-sided dice, and these 8-sided dice. But the 6-sided, there's nothing custom about them, which was a little, a little bit of a bummer. Like, it'd be cool if you did like a special symbol for the 1 or special symbol for the 6, but for gameplay purposes, that might not work really well. But I think what's cool about games like Dice Throne, again, does it really, really well. When you roll your dice, you roll like Yahtzee style, roll and then 2 re-rolls, and you get to choose abilities based on the dice, what the dice faces show. And that's really innovative. But I guess I think for fans of dice chucking, like, you get to chuck all the dice, they do different things, and I'm not sure that they've shown what makes this unique or special. I think they have what's called input randomness, where the game is about so you do the randomness first, and then you decide based on the random roll you got how you're going to use those dice to be most effective, and which I think is a good way to do randomness. If I need to hit something, like Warhammer is like, all right, I need to hit something, and then you roll your dice to see if you actually did or not, and your sniper totally whiffs, and you waste a turn or whatever. It never feels good, but you're rolling tons and tons of dice, so odds are like you're going to average about as many wins as you do losses or whatever. But so I guess I fail to see where it like, how is it truly innovative, so just based on dice, like, there are cool elements they put together, like, reveal your initiative card and then roll your dice and attack and things like that. But so I'm just not exactly sure, like, where is this innovating on experiences that we have. Maybe that's part of the problem, but it's definitely not all the problem. It's just like really cool minis, really cool board. If I saw this at a convention, I would say, yeah, that looks really fun. I'd like to try to play that. And I think that's probably the best thing that they have going for them, is like, when you're at a convention or in person, you're not competing with every other game in my head. You're only competing with my attention at that moment. And I'm thinking, all right, I need to go. I'm kind of hungry. We got to go to one of the food trucks or whatever and get some food. And then I walk by this booth and I'm like, hey, this looks cool. What are these, like, minis and arena board? And if I played this game in person, I might be like, dude, this is awesome. We're going to buy this. And I think that that's actually the one kind of consolation they have, is that there's you can, if I was in person, I feel like I could really sell this. I don't know exactly how the game plays, but I do think that it's something you could really sell, and to the right people.
I think one thing that might be working against it as well is that there seems to be a lack of variety in terms of the arenas. I can only see really one arena, and for like an arena game, I think you'd probably want like at least 3 versions. This is like, oh, this is the one that's really good for like range units, and this one's really good for like close units. So this one's the kind of like good for both. And that way you have different strategies for different arenas. I only see one arena.
I wonder if it's like you have different hexes that kind of change the same shape, like these spectral thorns, whatever that is. Or look at this giant crazy spike arm that probably moves like Super Mario,
Yeah, looks like that spins around or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Or yeah, and then the hellfire spray. Like, okay, you've got a lava thing that sucks you in, and so you do have like ways to customize the
Can
arena.
customize, yeah, with ice and things.
Some
I think one of the problems with some of those though is that if it's not really baked, if it's more like, oh, I
Mhm.
get to put this where I want to.
Yeah.
Like a large thing about arena games is positioning, and this is why a lot of arena games are actually identical. They
Mhm.
basically just mirrored the positionings, because you have such a huge advantage depending on your positioning in arena games. That's why
Mhm.
chess is just basically a carbon copy. You change the position of the the king and queen. That's the only
Yep.
difference really in terms of setup. But it's like a mirror copy, and there's a lot of like League of Legends. It's basically a carbon copy. A lot of the Quake arenas and things are sort of mirrored for this reason, so that it is fair. That you can't say, well, I started at
Right.
checkpoint B and I have a disadvantage because blah blah blah. Uh, so I wonder if that is coming to play. Now, we ran an arena game called Regulus, and it was this kind of arena battle game. And one thing that really made that game unique, and we used it a lot in the marketing, was that its table presence was tiny, so you could
Mhm.
literally play it like at a bar. So one of the greatest ads we had was a bunch of people playing it like at a cafe, and they're like
Wow.
all sitting on these tables, and there's like 6 people playing 3 different games in a
Can't
very
do that
small
with
space.
Warhammer.
Exactly, and that had loads of arenas because the arenas were played in a book that you flipped over. So you flip it over, and you just had so many arenas. So that was a really like unique selling point for that game, and that marketing messaging did well. But that was just focusing on what made it really unique.
Mhm.
Um, so I think if you are creating a competitive arena-based game, trying to find out what really makes your game stand out, what makes it unique, and then leverage that in your marketing messaging, because that's really going to draw people in.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Now, one other thing that I'll mention is that if you look at the comments, one of the most probably impactful things on me was, because it's like, why did this not perform as well as it should have? I think that we've identified that it doesn't have like a clear, this is why it's amazing, other than the production value is really incredible. Um, and so if you look at the most popular comments, first one, 16 upvotes. Yeah, like many, I'm out. Co-op is my playstyle of choice. No reason to back without it. Um, did you really need to scrap the co-op altogether? You've been working on it for years. Can you not at least include what you already made? Seems like ways to dump it. If anything, I'd rather you ditch the PvP and just focus on the co-op. These are the highest upvoted
Yeah,
comments.
interesting.
Um, let's see. They, next upvoted was like, looks fun and I pledged. However, after watching playthroughs, the fire mechanic is definitely going to need work. So it's like game development stuff. I'm sure that's okay, but um, stopped watching as soon as I heard the removal of fully co-op. I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
No co-op. What a shame. So yeah. By the way, this one of the newer features of Gamefound is that they're not blocking comments to non-backers. Like Gamefound used to have every single person, no matter who they were, up till very recently, could actually just comment on a campaign even if they hadn't backed it. And now it's by default, it's kind of turned that comments are only available to backers of a campaign.
If you enable it, you have to enable it.
Okay, so I thought
Yeah.
it's like you'd have to disable it or something, but I guess yeah. So they probably enabled it maybe because that's what Kickstarter does. Um, so they this comment, is there a full breakdown comparing what's different between the original campaign and this one? As an example, the base game here has 19 miniatures compared to 37 in the original. And there's an acknowledgement that it's a cheaper game this time around, and so that people are he's asking how much do you really need. The funding goal is like, question, is this a fake funding goal or a real one? And they're pretty sure, they're like decided that that's whatever we fund is, we're gonna make this.
Well, one thing I'm
So
noticing as well, a lot of these questions haven't been answered, and these are like the most popular
yeah,
upvotes. So
I think that there's someone named Mike Mielsick that answered most of them, but yeah, some of these aren't answered. But generally, there is a person that answers questions. But yeah, the next one is main page lists only competitive. Has the co-op been dropped? always thought it would be the other way around, as co-op seemed like the main way to play. And so there's a theme going here, and it's not all of them, but um, it's very concerning that cooperative is missing,
Mhm.
and a lot of people echoed that same frustration.
Which makes sense,
So
because board games, you don't want to set up a board game, invite your friends over for a night, play a 2 hour game just to lose. It's kind of a bad feeling. This is
right.
why, like as we said earlier, having competitive games that which are faster, where it's like, okay, well, let's play something else now, or let's do the best out of three. Uh, I think that
Mhm.
tends to work better for co-op rather than kind of like big chunky slogs where you play for 2 hours and then you lose. Like, oh well, that
Yeah.
feels bad. So not only do I lose, which is a bad feeling, it's like I felt like I lost time.
Yeah. Yeah, that is rough, and especially when you're playing like two player is my typical player count for any game. It needs to have a good two player in order for me to, be compelled to buy it. And solo maybe or whatever. Cooperative is very helpful, but yeah, two player like 1v1 games that take 2 hours are going to be right out generally, because at the end of that experience, like we had to, my wife and I, we have to both have fun the whole time in order for us to want to bring that back to the table. And a lot of the time, stomping, if my wife just stomps me, that's pretty fun for her. And then it's not fun for me if it happens over and over again, or if it takes a really long time to finally lose. That's kind of, frustrating. But games that end quick, it's like, all right, 20 minutes, it's back and forth, but I ended up winning. Great, let's play again. That's like a very a very different kind of experience, very different feeling. We could play a bunch in a row.
And this is why Euros are so popular, because even if you lose, you feel like you've been part of the story. I've built something. Yeah, maybe I didn't win the
Yeah.
game, but I built my little empire. I built my little civilization. I started my little business. And it wasn't the most successful, but I felt like so you're losing, but you're not losing with, oh, this was a complete waste of time. At
Yep.
least it's like, oh, I got to build a little civilization and my citizens were happy.
Yeah, it's something with a Euro you can't directly figure out oftentimes who is in the lead. Like Stonemeyer games will often end the game in a manner that doesn't, it's not like you're crossing a point threshold to end the game. Whereas something like Dune Imperium, it's the first 1 to 10 points triggers the end of the game. And or Galactic Cruise, like the person who puts the last cube in like the third year track or whatever, that triggers the end of the game, and it's everyone gets one last round to play, and and that's it. So the in general, I think that not or obfuscating, I think is the right word, obfuscating who is in the lead really, really helps, because I can play Wormspan or I can play Scythe or whatever and not know who's winning exactly, like until the very, very end when we finally tally the points. So I've kind of been having fun the whole time. And even though I end up losing, or let's say my, another player has a really, really good game and smashes, like we played Galactic Cruise, um, gosh, a week ago or 2 weeks ago or something with a 3 player game, and I ended up getting dominated like by 80 points. Somebody had a really, really good game, but I had fun like the whole time. And so the end game scoring was, I was obliterated, and they pulled ahead by like 70 points at the end or something.
Again.
Yeah.
As it happened in WoW, you just smash it again.
Yeah, exactly.
In a duel.
Yep. So but yeah, so I think that's something that naturally kind of works against arena type games. But one of the things I wanted to kind of get to was like the level of sunk cost that was certainly in this game. And again, I don't have any like facts or figures that are from the company, or I didn't ask for any or anything like that. But the sunk cost, the amount of sunk cost, it had to be very high. Like they probably used a lot of the funds that they had in their company for, from the sales of other games to pay for, those black magic inserts, to pay for the art, to pay for all of those things. Back in like 2021, they were paying for those things because they're like, well, we know we're going to use them, and we know the game is going to be, have this type of, these dice and these amount of characters and these number of minis. Like they had 37 miniatures, and in the base game is only 19, and I think more get added back in the expansions and whatnot. But they paid for a lot of these things, and they paid for a ton of, you know like structures to be like, what am I trying to say? Miniatures that are structures, like terrain miniatures and other big, things. And so all the art and everything like that was paid for. And so it's kind of like, I mean, my minis, my 10 miniatures cost me like $18,000 or something like that. No, I don't have to. There were other things that we paid for, but it was very expensive. Like all the minis and things that we paid for, they're big, complicated miniatures that are highly detailed, and these people have 40 of them almost, and so all of that was probably already paid for. And so they're like, well, we don't necessarily need to raise this much money. We spent it. We paid off our credit card bill. We have these assets. Might as well use them now, right? And so that's probably another thing that factored into them continuing to fund. And they had, what was really sad is they had 927 backers, or 928, versus the first campaign, which had almost 2,700. So the first campaign had almost 3 times the number of backers that this latest campaign did. And I think part of, a lot of that is probably from the co-op getting removed. But I still am not, I wonder, like, is that it? Like, I think if I had to like boil down two major things, is number one, the co-op being removed was a big hurdle for their the people that knew about the game. They could have easily lost a third of their backers just because of the co-op being removed, maybe 40% of their backers because of that. But the rest, I wonder, is it because of my perceived lack of innovation? Is it because of like the switch to Gamefound and losing a tiny bit of backers that way? Is it a combination of factors, maybe? Because I mean, switching to Gamefound, you start over, and they did send messages to like all their people and all their campaigns, I want to say, on Kickstarter, that Bloodstone is launching, including their Bloodstone relaunch on Kickstarter. But like I'm just like sad for them, in this way where they just put everything they had into it, and they got a less than stellar result, which I think they're going to be able to actually print the game and deliver to people. But if they want to make enough of this game that they can sell it afterward and have a longer tail and try to salvage the game at retail or whatever, it's going to come out of their pocket. And the game has not proven itself to be something that people desire that much in its current form. I mean, 900 backers is nothing to sneeze at, but it doesn't say this is an evergreen title for your company, right?
Yeah, I also think not having a tabletop simulator mod or way to play it online is a mistake with these types of games. I think if you've created some type of competitive game and you're running a crowdfunding campaign and you're not also doing a tournament at the same time, I think it's a huge missed opportunity. I think if you're running a competitive game, you should say, hey, here's like a starting deck or a starting character. We're running a tournament and the winner's going to win a pledge or get a title or something. You got to kind of draw out the competitive nature of people when creating a competitive game and make it fun and interactive. And I don't see that on the page currently. So I think that's maybe a mistake as well. Like if I was creating a competitive arena-based game, there would 100% be some type of tabletop simulator mod with at least the basic configuration of characters and a tournament. It's like, who can win, or even things like most plays. If you can demonstrate you've played this 100 times, then we will give you a prize or something. But I think that might be lacking there.
Yeah, that's true. One other thing that I'll say is the campaign itself lacked momentum, but I've seen, not only with this campaign, but very recently, I can't remember what other campaign there was that I saw just this last week, that was fully stretched. So there were no stretch goals. All of the things that would be stretch goals were placed into the box already, and they're like, we're not playing the game with you guys, we're just fully stretching this out. And that's like kind of a dream, as a publisher. It's kind of a dream where it's like, hey, I'm just gonna make the thing, and if you want it, you buy the thing, right? Very simple, very simple transaction. But when it's like, hey, if you back now, we're gonna get closer to unlocking content, there it's more complicated, right? It gets more complicated because if, like, I don't know, like, if I'm gonna pay for miniatures, if I've got like miniatures that I'm paying for, then I'm gonna have to pay for those things, if I can, like before the campaign, and so that I can show you miniatures, like miniature designs, at least the mock-ups of them. And so there are certain things, like all my characters in the first Deliverance campaign, I shared that we unlocked them as stretch goals, and I really felt bad about that. Instead, what I did for the second campaign, because I made all of the stuff, it's not like I wasn't going to make all the characters, is like what I was thinking. And so for the second campaign, I revealed like 5 characters, and then unlocked one more every week. It was just like, here's like every Thursday we're going to reveal like another character. And that was the way, and then we also had stretch goals too. It was like, here's some more cards, here's prayer cards, darkness cards, whatever, but the the characters themselves were already in the game, but I still treated them as sort of like a little loot box, like what's in the box, which character is this one, and that kind of thing. So and my audience loved that. They always came back every Thursday. They were really excited to see it, and that's really what the whole point of stretch goals are. You want your audience to come back and say, what did we unlock? Versus like, I backed on the first day, I'm going to sleep for 25 days and then come back before the campaign ends and decide if I want to keep my pledge or not, and so one of the things that can help convince people is we've knocked down 20 stretch goals. It's like, oh, this box is more valuable than when it started, so you're giving people a reason to continue, with their pledges. And I think that there's this just a big amount of, Kickstarter is not just about you getting the money to make your thing, or Gamefound, right? It's about you taking your backers on a journey. It's the experience itself is part of the process, what they're paying for, right? You don't want to give people just a one, this is a product, they can do that at a local game store. They go to a local game store, they see the product, they can buy it if they want. You have to be more. When you go crowdfunding, it's like you are providing sort of an inside look into the development and the creation and the journey, and all of that too. And part of that is you want your backers to feel like they're a meaningful part of the journey. And I think stretch goals is one of the ways to do that. And so I think that the first campaign for Bloodstone, they did like a lot of lore reveals, which I would say appeals to probably 10% of the player base. But so 90% felt kind of neglected, maybe, if that's all that they're revealing. But so, yeah, I'm just kind of thinking about it at this point. But I think that they, unfortunately, with the choices they made before the campaign launched, lost a lot of their audience. And maybe that boils down to like surveying the audience and saying, which way do you guys want us to go? What is most important to you about our games? Like I did this for my audience. I polled them and said, when we make another game, what are the most important elements to you? And one of them was like cooperative, competitive, both, or that kind of thing. And like 85% of our audience wanted cooperative, and there were like 18 to 20% wanted competitive. And that's not to say that 85% of the world wants cooperative games. That's the audience that I built. So if I, as my individual company, made a competitive game, I'm going to have to basically build a whole new audience from scratch. And so I will say that the original audience, by promising co-op and then ditching it, but not really being forward about that, hey, this is why we decided to go, and just like making sure that everybody knew before the campaign launched, this is competitive or whatever. I don't know. Just it felt like they maybe made a decision and said, you're going to like this because we like it internally. But then the audience is like, well, I only back cooperative games.
And that's a big problem. If you make a game that you personally like or your team likes, it might not necessarily mean it's kind of one of the traps of game development, right? You create something that you're happy with, but the market isn't too thrilled about. So that's why playtesting and getting your customer feedback is so important in the whole process.
Yeah. I think that vision is very important when, go back to Henry Ford and, if he said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me faster horses, and I think that in some cases there are people that will tell you what they want, but what you are making and what your vision is for the product is going to delight people. And I think that the key to that is like, what is unique about your product that makes like, I've got, if you're watching a video, like I've got a bunch of games on my shelf, probably about 200 games or so that I own. There are a lot of experiences that I have on my shelves. So why do I need your game? What is your game providing that I do not have on my shelf that I absolutely also need in my house? Like Sean, you have less games than I do, but you have a variety of experiences. Like if you want a really great co-op, you can go Deliverance. If you want a really great large player game that plays quickly, you've got Heat. If you want to code crack all day, like there's your Cypherpunk. If you want to hail Satan, you've got Dune. So,
well, if you want like a sort of narrative driven multi path, is Escape from Stalingrad Z. So yeah, they all do something different. I got a war game up there for King and Country, Shot and Pike of Warlord Games. So that's for big battles and things. So yeah, they all do something different.
That's awesome. So the question, I guess, that all of us ask ourselves is like, first of all, I have limited space in my house. So what am I going to, like, why will I buy this? And why will I potentially get rid of a game? And, experienced or seasoned people with lots of games like mine, there are shelf space that is kind of at a premium. So I might have to get rid of a game or two in order for me to fit the next one, And so those are all things to think about. But if you can't answer what makes your game unique in a way that is very specific, that is informed by your players and what they told you they liked about the game, then you have work to do. And I think that the other day there was somebody that was like, people will spam their game in our Crowdfunding Nerds community on Facebook, and I always actually read them. And sometimes I will actually even approve them when they're super spammy. Like I'll approve the post and then I'll give them feedback. Like, dude, you're talking about it wrong. Like, why? This game takes 10 minutes to learn and a lifetime to master. And it's the ultimate blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, so it's chess. It's like, I have chess already. And why is your game, like, why would I buy this game that I already have? Like, you just described a game that I already have that's existed for what, like 1,500 years, So the question is like, how, that person did not understand what their unique selling position was, or they didn't understand what actually was innovative in the market. They're just like, I've never played a game before, but I made this one and it's the best one I've ever played. It's like, of course it is. That's your first one you've ever played. Right. Or, like my point I'm trying to make is like, you have such a limited breadth of experience. Right. So, I don't know. I guess that's maybe a big takeaway. And then as an experienced creator, you have an audience that has an opinion. And I think that sometimes we can lose sight when we're more experienced. You're up a few levels, you could just fall harder. We always should be bringing our fans along in that process. I think, like you said, Sean, tabletop simulator mod, something that you can play with people and that they can enjoy, that they can really sink their teeth into. Someone says no co-op, oh, I'm out. It's like, someone, if there was someone that could be like, dude, I was like that too, but when I played, it was so much better than I expected or whatever. Um,
Yeah, I think involving a community early on, I think is so key. I know with Cypherpunk, what I've been doing at the time where I've seen the most development is when I've had a scheduled weekly playtesting session, because I always have to prepare something. And when I stopped that, I found that the development has stagnated. So I think involving the community is super important in game development. If there was such a big gap in this particular project between the Kickstarter and the relaunch on Gamefound, why wasn't there like weekly tournaments or weekly games, and then maybe seasonal tournaments? And like, I just, that's something a community I'd want to definitely foster. If I was creating a competitive game, try reward titles or special skins or special cards to people who've sort of committed themselves to their game and to their environment, and really kind of put them in the forefront. Have like a hall of fame. You got to kind of tap into all the kind of like competitive, salty, sweaty gamer types of these genres, that they like recognition, they like leaderboards, they like unique mount vanity things like different colored swords or whatever. It's just, you got to give that to them.
Yeah, I'll also say that I think that one of the hallmarks of larger companies that have been successful on Kickstarter with a number of projects is that they tend to rely on their followers, like Kickstarter follower count and whatever, that will build like via social media. And I think that this is one of the ways that you can, spike for one project that's really great, and then crater for another project that, just you were in expectation. This is like why Mythic Games went out of business. But one of the reasons, of course, there were many, but when you aren't constantly building your followers into like fans of your products via email and other types of events, I think it's when it's event to event and the events are Kickstarter or conventions, you're not going to be able to reach people as often as you would just in simply like a monthly email update, and trying to with a meaningful call to action in each, and building the email list with new blood, I think is very important. Because and that's, I think that last point, I think, is where a lot of these bigger companies miss, because they only build Kickstarter followers, Gamefound followers, and that's just what they do. Well, those are all like very separate, like, each campaign is like a separate silo of players, and there's crossover between all of them. I mean, you have some people that will back every campaign, so they'll get every update on every campaign that you share. But you're going to have a lot of people that haven't heard from you in a year and a half, because that was when the last update to the campaign that was fulfilled was, that they subscribed to was on. And so now that person's like, oh yeah, I own one of their games, but maybe they got it to the table, maybe not. But if you just had that person on an email list, you would have communicated with them, 18 more times, because of your monthly email that goes out, right? And so the monthly email, as people grow, becomes more and more valuable. So as you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, it's just my first project, or it's just my second project, or I'm just going to use Kickstarter as like, whatever, like, you have to transition to emails. It's like, it's so funny, because in this industry, this crowdfunding industry, like, people are debating whether followers or emails are better. And like literally every other industry on the planet, the email list is the most valuable asset that exists in your company. So don't be an idiot and develop an email list, and nurture that list. That's your future as a company. I think one company that does such a great job with this is Stonemaier Games. They bring their people, they are big enough that they can give separate emails for their different intellectual properties. So you can opt into Wingspan emails, you can opt into whatever, expeditions emails and stuff like that. But I can't, I just have to like beat the drum over and over again. Like, you have to cultivate your email list. If you want to be a long-term successful company, you will benefit from having an email list. And so I followed Druid City Games for many years, and I haven't been on their an email list. Maybe it's because I don't know, but I back campaigns. I just haven't been added to an email list. So not sure if that's my own individual experience, and they do have an email that they send every week and they have been on it. But just something I do see other companies making that mistake. And so maybe it's a possibility that they made it too. I don't know.
So if you're playing a sweaty competitive 1v1 or 2v2 tabletop game, you need to get the Tabletone app, because you can have customized music, you can have really robust competitive music or sad music when you lose. So download the Tabletone app and check it out at tabletone.app.
Awesome.
Thanks for sponsoring this podcast, Tabletone.
Heck yeah. So now that we've finished fully kicking the dead horse, or he's not dead, he raised $180,000, and I think that he'll be fine in the long term, and it's certainly something that they will have pulled many lessons from. We'll see you on the next episode, nerds.
Hey, Crowdfunding Nerds. If you're looking for an awesome fulfillment partner for U.S. shipping, you should really consider Bridge Distribution and Fulfillment. I personally use them. I've used them for multiple projects. They do such a great job. They also can fulfill Amazon orders and get you prepped for Amazon and their warehousing team. I have been so happy using Bridge Distribution. I'm really proud that they're sponsoring us. If you reach out, bridgedist.com, that's bridgedist.com, let them know we sent you.